But anything you say from this point, you just know people will be able to see it at least on a replay, if not on the live.
Yeah, absolutely.
But man, I feel like I just came out of a dimension again. Are we even coming out of dimension anymore? But yeah, Morgan, Morgan mentioned your name, and I was like, I think I know that name. And then she's like, the diamond part, and I went, oh, I remember, because I do remember that, like from comments or seeing you and the, different things like that. I always I go off of that. Sometimes I won't know their face, but most of the time the name. Yeah, so that was cool.
Yeah, that's very nice.
Here, let me make sure.
Great to have a conversation with you, Todd. As I've noticed with your posts that you've been very much in that mode of recognizing that it's time we're real, that we embody this whole multidimensional frequency and bring it into our daily lives and bring it into our bodies, and that we are actually having a human experience.
Yeah. Everything she said. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because we're like entering this. I put up a post yesterday, like something. And I was like, we're about to enter the no bullshit zone, and so there's something about what's happening that it doesn't matter who you are and what's happened to you.
Yeah.
Everything is becoming proportionate to one thing, and that one thing is everything is the same. So it's this weird kind of you think of like ascending and you go like what is it, Enoch or Ezekiel, those that just spiritually spontaneously combust, basically. They don't go through a physical death, whatever. And you would think it would be something really extraordinary, like a lightning bolt. But I think it's actually what you're talking about. I think it's actually the bare bones human. Where's my team? No, it's just me by myself walking through this with the the wealth of our experience. And it's in that little story.
Absolutely. Well, I was just saying to Morgan that I'm feeling like I've become mature, that I'm a matured my soul, let's say, just with what I've been going through the last maybe 10 years particularly. And I'm actually feeling quite proud of myself.
Right.
Yeah. And the experience I've recently come out of, which was very testing, and I've, for one, had to pull everything together in a very grounded way, was my son committing suicide. And that was 4 months ago. He committed suicide. And it's been a really fascinating journey, to be honest, which I would quite like to share, because I think that for many out there, they will maybe know someone that has taken their life or be going through grievance themselves. And I'd just like to say that it's the mind, it's the mental body that misses the person, that holds on very, very tightly and creates the torment in grievance. Yeah. Yeah.
That's powerful.
It is kind of big.
So it sounds like that you've been aware, awake, consciously creating, self-introspective. You've been spiritually inclined, it sounds like, and just this very recently happened.
Yeah.
And with what you're saying, it's like with what you're saying about wanting to share it, it's like all three of those things are like coming together in one moment. You know what I mean? I mean, that's a lot
Yeah.
that you said. That's a lot. The first part was a lot that you said. The second part was a whole lot what you said. And then the third part about coming out, that's, I mean, I feel your energy. So we're all ears.
Yeah. So, how can I put it? I want to be sensitive to people's belief systems. And if that was one thing that I was very aware of when my son took his life, was the belief systems of people around me. And they seemed to be, in many cases, quite different to mine. And so I took the journey quite personally because I didn't want it to be watered down through other people's energies coming in for me. I had walked by my son's side for a number of years. He had an addiction, and it was really difficult to watch his soul disappear at times, and the struggle that he was having, which I was unable to rescue him, or I learned not to enable him. And I learned through that process to hold a lot of love for him and a lot of compassion for him. I offered advice. It taught me a lot about boundaries and lots of strengthening within, because it was very difficult to watch. And I worried a lot about him, and I let go. I had to learn a lot of letting go. It's his journey, his path, and I have mine. And at the same time, I was aware of my soul path, and I was working in service of the light, and my son was working or moving, dancing with the devil in the dark. So it was really a fascinating observation for me, and quite difficult sometimes to witness this. And as you and I both know, there are the two polarities playing out here very strongly on this earth.
Can you please continue? But can I ask you a quick question, because I think it's really important. I think it's really important. You were talking about, you know, what you're coming to, and you said that you were talking about your son and his addiction, but more important to me, you said something like when his soul was gone, something like that. Do you remember what?
Yes.
So I've never heard anyone put it like that. I've seen it in people I've known, and probably in myself. But I've never heard anyone say that. And I just think it's important for maybe all of us to be aware about, because it can be for a lifetime. It can be for a part of a lifetime. But what do you mean by you can lose when someone's soul is not there? Because however you said that, it was said in a way that I understood it was the soul's always there, but they've lost sight of their own soul, that type of thing. Is that right?
I guess that's true. I guess that's another way of putting it. For me, I'm saying it because his eyes there was nothing. Yeah, I couldn't see. You know, the eyes are the mirror of the soul, and when he was having a lot of the methamphetamine drug that he was, which is ice, which is pee, and it's quite serious. It affects the mind a lot and the physical body, but it takes the soul away. As they say, it's renowned. It seems to just make them robotic and degenerate the physical body and affect the mind. And depending on whether he was deeply in it or having a moment of grace of trying his very utmost because he had a child or he didn't want to be there. It was only short-lived because his mind had the addiction, so he wanted to go back to it. So that's really, I as a someone that sees, could see he wasn't there.
Yeah.
He'd been taken over by dark forces, let's say. Yeah.
Yeah, please continue. I just one quick comment. I literally have heard more people say that. I've said that myself. I think that the things that are done in that state of a meth, you would just say, you know, medically or clinically a meth induced state. Yeah, it's almost like it's a liquid archonic type of, you know, I've heard many people say, I'm not even me. I'm not even there. And I can
That's
totally, but yeah, so please continue. So this is where you came from. And
so
this,
yeah, so this was the journey with my son before he took his life. So it had become too much for him. It was at the equinox energy. Remember, the equinox came a little bit before the full moon in March, and
oh
he,
yeah.
yeah, and it was a very powerful wave of energy, and I got the knock on the door, and my son had taken his life in his apartment, and I went to see him, and that was very, that was well, I guess I wasn't fully present because of the shock and the trauma initially when I saw his body, but I'm glad that I was able to touch him and hug him and speak to him at the time. And that is very precious to be able to do something like that with, I mean, keeping in mind this is my son. I birthed him, I gave him life, and yeah, that was a beautiful, powerful experience to be able to touch him and speak to him. And I was probably fractaled. I probably got smashed to smithereens, and I was all over the place multidimensionally. I wasn't grounded. I was in a weird dream state. Is this real? What's happening here? And went through the process of his funeral within 5 days, and that happened, and I recognized that I wasn't grounded. The biggest thing was that my physical body was really heavy and I wasn't grounded. My mind, right from the beginning, honored, respected his choice. It wasn't like, why did you do this? It was like, my goodness me, son, I really can understand, I can feel into why you would have done this. It was your choice. You chose this. You were living a very difficult life. Everything was so hard for you. I honor, I respect, and I totally love you for this process. And that was something right from the beginning that I was able to do, which was really empowering for me. So my mind, my mental body really was quite strong on understanding and stable with it. It was my physical body, which was my emotions and my literal physical body, that was disconnected and needed me to speak to it, to reassure it about what was happening here. And I also needed to wail and sob and cry all those tears through my body to process and assimilate this huge thing that had happened unexpectedly. Even though I knew he was had mental health issues, that he was physically unwell. I really, in the moment, didn't really think that this was going to happen on that particular day. So it came as a shock. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so that was in March. That was right. Yeah, that's when that whole thing started, right? If I'm not mistaken, like we had a
Yeah.
2, 3 eclipses and 4
Yeah.
eclipses, and this it was like first like March through like end of May.
Yeah. Big portal of energy. So the interesting thing for me with this process, or many of these processes, was the fact that I actually journeyed with him to the afterlife, so to speak. So when he got taken through the funnel, the birthing canal of the afterlife, so it's like a golden birthing canal that he was sucked through, having taken his life, right? And that's a very it's like a sieve. It sieves all the shit that was there, and he's bathed in love, right? So in a very interesting way, for the first 2 weeks, I felt incredibly held with angelic, beautiful, loving energy. It was so cocooning. I wasn't fully with it, and I was being held beautifully. And I felt his expansion as he went through the birthing canal to the afterlife. And then when he went through his life review at certain points in my lucid dream state, I would be also seeing his life review, certain points of his life, from baby, child, etc. He was 30, so he had 30 years of life. I was kind of also reviewing. And for me, I had to be very careful at this point that my brain didn't latch on to what I could have possibly have done different, and any blame, self-blame, or mental, getting caught up in the mental loop of what could I have done if that had have happened, and so I was very aware that my mind needed to be settled and to just keep going back into my body. Okay, my body. It was all about my body, not allowing my mind to become disobedient and take me on a hellish journey, which would have kept me stuck in grievance for a long time. So I innately kind of got this, which is a blessing. So I was focusing on my physical body. And the one thing, as a woman, having birthed my own child into this life and then been a part of his rebirth into the afterlife, was the contractions and the aching and the absolute belly, the tummy. The connection to my son had been severed. I had birthed him into this life, and a mother's connection to their child is always happening. It's called intuition or gut feeling, or I sense, or I know, and we have this natural, organic connection to our child, and he'd been taken from me off the planet. And so my actual physical body was trying to hone into this boy who wasn't there. And so it was aching, crazy aching, physical heaviness, grief in the physical was phenomenal. And my coping mechanism, and I'm sharing this because there might be something that resonates for others. And in the physical, I spoke to my body. I was aware of my body. I was listening to my body, but I was speaking to it, helping it through all the processes, letting it know that I was with it and that it was going through this process and that it would, move through it.
It's fascinating. So, who was talking? And
My higher self.
yes, but I love the way you say I was talking to my body, and I just wanted to confirm what I guess what I already knew. But and then because it is interesting what's been happening, at least over the last few months for people in terms of hearing different parts of themselves. As we come into awareness of these parts of ourselves or claim these parts of ourselves. But from your perspective, like, if that was that part of you doing the speaking, what would the body be? Was it more of a, because a lot of people have talked about in the last 2 or 3 months about how the body's talking,
Yes.
but there's also these multiple human parts, like there's multidimensionality to the human itself that we're discovering. But like
Yes.
for you, was
Yes.
it like the I sometimes think, is it the higher self talking to the human soul, or you know what I mean? Like the higher. What?
I hear you with that. In the case I was just remembering for myself, I was actually talking to my physical body. I was
Oh,
talking to
wow.
my womb. I was talking to my physical body because my physical body was grieving. My actual physical body was grieving my son, right? My mental body was missing him.
Okay.
Okay. And that can play a lot of tricks on you, because of course we miss our loved ones, but it can keep one in the loop of grievance if you constantly are missing them, as opposed to honoring, respecting their choice to go elsewhere, which is only basically like in another room, because the veil's so thin, they aren't very far away, which came to light for me in my grievance and my processing and assimilating my son leaving the planet, because I was able to hear him. I mean, I wouldn't have called myself a medium. However, in this case, my son was very clearly speaking to me in the way that he would have if he was more clear, if he was well. So I
Right.
was able to have conversations and developing a new relationship with my son.
Wow, that's fascinating. So your physical part of you could no longer had been severed, and then
Mm-hmm.
you could actually feel into that, and then at the same time the connection became stronger from the real umbilical cord, basically. So, because I was going to ask you, so did you have that ability uh, prior to this over these last 10 years, and or did any type of new sensitivities kind of appear or coincide with what happened?
Good question. Absolutely, Todd. So I experienced an expansion of light when he went into the afterlife. In that birthing canal, the golden light that sucked him over, where the angels held him, etc. That whole, because right at the very beginning, within the first 2 weeks, I just felt the light had expanded, that I had become more super sensitive and had refined some of my gifts. The mediumship side of it, the hearing, I don't believe was very strong at all. And I mean, my mother passed 8 years ago, and I hadn't had it like this. And with my son, I can kind of see his grin. I hear him, and I felt him I felt him come into my soul. I felt our souls. I felt a soul hug from him. He came in and he gave me hugs of reassurance. He was very much and has been very much around me.
God.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
So were you, so like, I mean, I know that you can only go through that type of thing alone. I'm just talking about losing a loved one, regardless of the, you know what I mean? The the grieving process.
Yeah.
But I would imagine, or it sounds like, with you having your finger on, you know, of course, the physical, which is really incredible, the way you were understanding and communing with the physical, and then, like you said, the mental, you were aware, that voice was aware, don't go into that mind game, don't go into the programs. And then the emotional, well, I had to wail at times, and you know, and then you end up actually having an expansion from this,
and
right?
an eternal spiritual connection with my son was enhanced because I wasn't able to have that over the last 10 years because he was lost. So that wasn't existing. And I'm a very soulful, soul's everything for me. And I never had that with this beautiful soul whom I knew as a child. You know, my beautiful soulmate child had become what he had chosen to become. I'm not judging his choices. He chose this life, but I lost that connection with him, and now I've gained it.
Yeah, this is some heavy stuff. I mean, in a good way that you're talking about. It takes.
It was a huge thing. It has been a huge thing.
Yeah, to say the least. But I mean, there's such a multi aspect type of thing to it as you talk about it, as you've gone through it, and as it's been for you.
Yeah, it has been so fascinating. So the emotional, it was absolutely like the sea. It was like waves. It would just come in, waves of sudden grief. You know, it would be like my boy, you know, my beautiful boy, my son. You know, it would be this huge grief, and I would absolutely cry, and my face was swollen, and I would sob. It would be the deepest sobbing, and often I would wake in the middle of the night, and it would happen. I would just get this big wave of just absolute sadness and the tragedy of it all. You know, it was just, but however, I honored the emotions enough to just go with it. So when they came, I did it. I surrendered. I allowed the process, and I had tissues everywhere, and I just did it. And I didn't make excuses if my eyes were red or I was feeling of that nature. I allowed that process, and then the physical body was still heavy, and my feet were playing up. It was like I wasn't grounded. It was like I still hadn't come back fully into my body. So what I did, and I was drawn to do, was have reflexology for my feet, and some weeks I had 3 massages. 3 massages a week.
And that was with the conscious intention of nurturing yourself, to thine own self be true.
Yeah, bringing myself back into my body, because through the massage I felt my body come back. It probably took 6 weeks after the initial trauma and shock for my body actually to feel like it was coming back, like I was back in my body fully. You know, it was just the way it was for me.
Wow.
Yeah, I know it was.
Did you have that kind of like specific connection or differentiation of connection from like mental, emotional, body before it sounds like you were totally aware.
Yeah.
Like I'm fascinated by it because obviously we've all gone through a lot of stuff just energetically, lately over the last whatever. And sometimes you have those heavy crying sessions. And sometimes as I was listening to you, sometimes I cry, and it's when I'm doing, I guess, what you would call body work, or you're talking to your body or working something out that's blocked in your body, and things come up, and it's a different kind of crying,
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah.
And this has been, you're talking about a time period of the last 4 months, right?
Only 4 months. So I would be pretty sure that I could say that after 8 weeks, I had claimed my freedom. I had claimed the freedom my son had also claimed over the other side. I also here had claimed my freedom, like more freedom. You know what I'm saying? I felt really free. I felt free from grievance. I felt free from any mind stuff that wasn't existing, and I felt at peace. I felt the peace that he was feeling over there. I also felt the peace. I was at peace. I was at peace knowing he was resting in peace or working over there. He'll have to work over there a lot to come back into his soul. So he's not resting. He came to the Earth School and God knows what he was up to. He was just avoiding shit, quite frankly. Anyway, he's gone back and he will be doing a lot of work over there and a lot of healing and growing, because it didn't really. Anyway, it's still not a judgy thing. It's just a fact.
No, I get what you're saying. I've picked up on that same, different description, but, from other people, talking to other people, and even from some personal experience years ago. But I think that, that's a really good anecdote, because it really gives you an honest perspective. The Afterlife of Billy Fingers, that book by Anne, whatever his sister's name is, that has the same type of perspective, which is basically, hey, nothing gets missed. The universe doesn't miss anything, and you're going to basically start where you left, kind of thing, right? So I think that perspective is a really good perspective to have and to think about in the times we live in now. And you've got such this is 4 months in the middle of all of this, and to see you like this. How I know that you, in those first 8 weeks, you must have been with yourself, literally present all time. Did you have any support from like family and stuff like that?
From a distance, but not. I am on my own in my own environment, which really, as you would know, is often the best way to accelerate processes, is being alone. And when I say alone, let's say all one, alone, all one with me, And so that was my blessing. And also because belief systems out there around suicide and how I would be feeling. So people often would assume that I would be going through it in a way that they'd gone through it, or a friend of theirs had gone through it, as opposed to being in tune with where I was at. And I found that not a lot of people were recognizing that I had abilities to process this quite quickly, that it doesn't need to be held on to for 20 years, 2 years, 5 years. That grievance often, when it is held on to, is held on from the mind. The mind misses the person, and then through the mind missing the person, it starts to come from the mind down and out, and then they become down and out, as in, a bit dull, loose as shine, still in a bit of grief, comes and goes. You know, I really wasn't wanting that, because I knew I didn't deserve it for a start, and my son wouldn't truly want that for me. I was truly happy that he was at peace, and there was closure finally, because really at the end of the day, Todd, if I missed anything, it was waking up every day and thinking, feeling into my son and going, oh my gosh, I wonder what's going to happen today. I hope he's okay. I hope he can feed himself. I hope he doesn't have a car accident, because he caused me quite a lot of, let's call it, worry.
So that was a paradigm shift in itself, I guess, wasn't it?
That was freedom.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
I didn't have to wake up every day and worry about my beautiful, beloved son. And initially I missed that. Initially I felt this big hole, this big gap, because something had gone. What had gone was that every day, or most days, you know, there'd be this concern for my son. He wasn't here. So naturally there was a little recalibration happening within my being, because I had to adjust everything around my son not being here on this plane, but at the same time embracing and feeling the power of having this clear, more enlightened, or becoming more enlightened young man as a mate coming in, you know, giving me powerful hugs. I've never had that from him before.
Wow.
Interesting, isn't it?
It's more than interesting. It's the real stuff. It's a pure real-time intel. Just listening to you talk about it. Well, I can see the comments on all the platforms, all 10 platforms, and you can't get a higher visitation experience in something like this.
Yeah.
Did you, in those first 8 weeks, did you have your moments where you couldn't maintain, where the mind took over, or the whatever?
Yep. So because he had the energy of terror, the frequency of terror, which isn't something I live with. And when he was doing his life review, I actually picked some of the lower frequencies up and felt them in my body. So at one point, I started to get paranoid, you know, locking my doors and freaking out, you know. Wow. So my mind went there. The other thing, very, very, very just fractionally, my mind went into, oh, if I'd only done this, if I had done that, or if this had been different in his childhood, you know, just the analyzing and the imagining in the brain. And do you know what? It actually made me laugh. And I thought, this is what I said to myself. I said, geez, I could send myself nuts. I could send myself nuts. It would never end. My mind could just take me on a huge journey. And of course, I didn't want that. But what I loved was I loved actually falling back into myself. I loved it because I had made quite good friends with myself, you know, during the process. Like I could feel my body being comforted by my choices. I could feel my emotions softening into, you know, through the shifts and changes. And I actually preferred, Todd, to be living in my body. This is a key. I preferred living in my body than in my brain.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
And you know, because we spend a lot of time talking about the heart, and not to discount the heart, but the body Like, even like as you relay your story, that's why I asked the question, what was the higher self speaking to? And I guess it was speaking to the entire ensemble human, multi-layered aspect.
And also, I mean, I have rituals. I've been on my journey of soul growth for many, many years. I would say consciously probably for 30.
Really?
Yeah, I'm a crone. But I don't like that word. I'm a mature frequency.
Yeah.
And so I mean 30 years is a longer part of my life than someone else, so to speak. Yeah. And so I have the ability to understand my I am presence versus my human side. And I often ask that my I am presence is my guiding intelligence and my human side is not disobedient, as one of my practices, let's say. Yeah.
Yes, I get that.
Because
there's a lot of, well, as you were talking about it, and the contrast. Well, first you have the contrast of your son, because through traumas or situations like that myself and many other people can identify with, you're disassociating, right? Like, I mean, and then you're actually saying it's almost like reassociation. Like you said, you became a very good friend with yourself. You got to know yourself. It's almost like you were coming back into your body.
Yeah. So because I was aware that I'd left my body through the trauma and shock and the grief, right? And prior to that, I was already starting, my embodiment phase with the spiritual and the inner work that I had been doing for a number of years. Okay. So for me, I was already comfortable in my own skin. I've already developed myself enough to understand varying processes. Okay. So when I went out there and went through this process, then I had the skill or the knowing, the innate knowing to organically bring myself back because of my maturity. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It was almost like it's almost like, well, it probably is. Like, I mean, we can look at it from the human perspective and of course have the understanding that you don't get anything for free and you start where you left off, kind of thing. But it sounds like y'all have obviously a very strong soul connection, some type of powerful contractual, like you were almost like you were made for the moment. I don't know what it looks like on his side and how the whole situation, what it put him into in terms of the next step of elevation. But like for you, it's almost like do you feel like that your experience is somehow going to translate or manifest in your practice or in your life, or like in a way of maybe helping others?
Oh, bless you, Todd. I feel that it's a great example. I feel that the greatest teachers teach by example. I mean, we can only be true to ourselves, our own truth, and allow that to filter out, which becomes our essence of who we uniquely are. And yes, I'm happy to be me. I've always quite enjoyed being me. Thank goodness. I don't mind living in my body. And you know what I mean? I quite like myself. In fact, I think I've developed a bit of a love for me, which is pretty good. It certainly beats what I was like as a younger one. Yeah. And I didn't realize the conditioning around suicide and death, really, it's just enlightened me further to recognize that at this point on the planet, we can expect a lot of people to make the choice to go over, Todd.
Mm. Can you repeat that?
We can expect that we're going to know someone that's choosing to go over, to leave the planet, take their life. This is becoming a lot more common and still not greatly spoken about openly, but it is definitely something that I am hearing about, and I know exists in New Zealand. We have a lot of people taking their lives, different age groups, right up mature people, and as low down, unfortunately, as 9 or 10 taking their lives. You know, people are, the shadow of the person is overwhelming them. It's taking the light. There's more shadow than light. It just overwhelms them. It starts normally in the brain, and it just overrides any light form, and they just choose to go because there's no light, there's no spark. They're just wanting to go, and that's what happened to my son. The darkness overwhelmed him in that moment, and had done previously, on and off, but there was still enough light to keep him here, let's say, and then boom, he made a choice, and that's just the way it is. And of course, once he went straight into the light, the dark dissipated because it couldn't feed off any light, and that's just the way it was.
Yeah, that's important too, to look through that set of eyes and see it for what it is. You know, it's from the human level. It's hard not to have some type of prejudice, bias, judgment, whatever. But and I do agree with you. I know a lot of people that's occurred, and I think you're right. I think it's a lot more prevalent. It'd be interesting to see what the history of that is statistically, if you could trust the information. But I bet you you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, and you're right about the all different age groups too. Did you have like in this 4-month period? I can't even imagine what those first 8 weeks were like. I guess it was almost like first half, second half for you. But in those 4 months, like did you have any moments that were just like mind blowing where you're just like, oh my God, whether it be revelation or pain or whatever?
Well, it depended. Yes, there was the expansion. It's like I just felt so frigging light and sensitive, and my gifts were finely tuned. Being finely tuned, I feel that I'm able to see more as a seer, like just see so much more clarity and understanding with people and situations. I'm spending more time with myself quite comfortably, because I'm being very aware where I put my energy, and certain things aren't resonating. I've just had I've had an expansion, so to speak, without a doubt. Yeah, very much so. And for me, I do speak light language, and I was able to just speak to myself. To be really honest, that was very helpful for me, to be able to offer myself what I offer others. Love thyself, know thyself, look after myself. Was beautiful. And I've got grandchildren, so the innocent, beautiful younger ones were my salve, my heart self, and you know, we could play, so we hung out together, and very, like, my son has an 8-year-old boy, and I supported his son through the process, just through being who I am, I guess. And he's amazing. He's so understanding. Dad's the spirit, dad's the soul. I can't hear him yet, but I hope I can one day. And you know, he just openly has accepted this new way. He never, yeah, he grieved in his own way, but being 8, he's just, it's just like, oh well, that's life, and I'll miss my daddy. And however, he's doing really well.
God.
Look, Todd, death, not so much suicide, but suicide is still a passing over. And if they're choosing, it's about, like, okay, we honor that that's your choice. It's not easy here, and these are crazy times. And for some people, if that's their way of going into higher love notes and finding freedom, then, you know, we've got to honor that. And death, you know, whether it's cancer, stroke, heart attack, which are really big things on the planet, often if you look at the belief systems running in those people, how and why did they get those diseases anyway, which are knocking them off the planet? And dementia, which is really someone wanting to go and not quite getting there, and being sort of stuck halfway. I mean, who are we to say that they're not actually saying, I want to go, but they're doing it in a different way? I want to go, but, well, what they're saying is, I don't really want to be fully present here, so I'm going to be half-hearted. I'm going to have, I'm going to water my life down and sort of shrivel up. So, you know, their heart contracts and so forth, and they get these sicknesses because they're not blossoming, they're not opening themselves up to the fullness of life, allowing the energy to come in, which is nurturing, which is light-giving, which, of course, is what is keeping us well, and I like to think ageless, because, yeah, that's my passion.
I love it. Energetically, it's the same thing, is what you're saying. I mean, I'm not saying for everybody, but energetically, you can be doing that too. It's just not what it looks like. Somebody at the very top of the show made a good point, and they were saying that they know a lot of people that meth was a gateway to the higher dimensions. Sometimes that can go well, and sometimes it doesn't. Most of the time it doesn't. But I know people, but yeah, I was just going to say that if you look at that from the human standpoint, you're like, oh, that's crazy. But from a you know, I guess from a soul level, or being able to be aware of these higher aspects of ourselves and experiences and connections and potentials, it's the same thing.
I totally understand, and I think every soul is different.
Yeah.
With my son, because he had been on it for such a long time, and he mixed with dark people, I feel that for him that wasn't. For me, when I was young, way back when Timothy O'Leary was, you know, talking about LSD, I took LSD, and that was a gateway.
Yeah.
So, you know, very much so. So I agree, it definitely can be a gateway, but in my son's case,
that's like I said, in most cases, it's not good. It's a very, you know, I mean, and we could talk about that for ages. I'd rather, I mean, because there's a lot of information on it, Nazi concentration camps, so on. But anyway, and even in this whole thing with Adderall, you know, I mean, that's what it is. It's just legal meth. But like for you, did you just mention your passion? But I mean, is there an evolved passion or a new passion as a result of these last 4 months?
Okay, I feel like like my son, he's had a rebirth. I feel like I've also come out of a birthing canal. I feel very much in the new phase, Todd. I'm in a new phase. I'm not necessarily knowing completely. I'm allowing life to be its adventure and the mystery that it really is. And I'm open. I have my freedom. I feel something is coming forward for me. I've put over the years planted seeds, and hopefully things will start to show up that would be of the higher vibrational notes for me, rather than to have to go through difficult initiations for my soul journey. I'm a little bit over it.
Yeah, well, don't feel like the Lone Ranger. And I've been saying for a couple of weeks on the show, you know, because I mean, you're such a perfect example of how we're all, as much as it hurts, able to see things for the energy that it is, you know, as opposed to the human trauma that our program that it can present and we can buy into, or that we have in the past. But I forgot what I was going to say. I was just saying how the energy of not say all of us, I mean, but you know, so many people that have been awake and aware, even if just go back 5 or 10 years, some of these newer awakenings are just as powerful. We've had people on the show awake 2 or 3 years, but the energy of them going, hey, you know what? Let's do this, or F it, I'm out of here, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, let's do this. Yeah. And I think it kind of feels, I mean, like your story is like a very concentrated example, you know, in this field of information that we might call this linear 4 months. I mean, I mean, in proportion to the rest of your life, how much space does that 4 months take up? You know what I mean? Like in terms of presence, in terms of impact, you know what I mean?
Well, how much space does my whole life take up? It feels like, I feel like this is it. I don't remember. It's like there's been a real sweeping clean, a wash of light over my past. I'm not really attached as such. I mean, I know it's built my personality and my character and you know, my soul and all that. The 4 months feels, I don't even know. I can't even answer that. It's weird. It's surreal in a way. I mean, I went through such a lot in such a short time. I really did. Time didn't exist like usual. Yeah. And I just wanted to share this, not saying this is the only way to process situations of this nature. It's just one way that it can be done, and that it doesn't need to set a person's life back, and it doesn't need to be held on to. It's not that I don't miss my son, but I don't miss him in the sense that he's here. I have a relationship with him, and I've processed it through, you know, my mind's processed it, my body's processed it, my emotions have processed it, and it's processed it out completely, which means that I won't have triggers, or I won't have moments where it's going to come back and be with me for the next 20 years. And it's possible. With the energies being so pure and fast, we can do this now. We don't have to go with the old programming around suicide and death experiences and change.
Yeah.
Which is a big thing too.
Any program. So you know those, I know you can relate to this. I'm sure everybody can, actually. But you know those moments when you lay down, say you lay down before you go to bed, you're alone.
Yeah.
And you've been in the place that you are, because there's, you know what I mean? And you just kind of connect, and when you're in that stillness, how often does he come in?
You mean as in the spirit of
Like
what
when you say
coming?
you like feeling him in your heart, or just in any way at all. Like, I mean, I'm just wondering if, you know what I mean?
Okay, yeah. I have been calling him in to, I'm his cheerleader now. Okay, because when he went over and went through his shaking up and waking up further than he had been here, he is going through his own journey to come back into soul, but over the other side. And so I'm his cheerleader. So if I'm calling him in, I'm saying, as a mother would, my son, I'm with you, I'm supporting you, I'm proud of you, you can do this, you've got support on the other side. And just speaking to him really, and just letting him know that I'm doing the best I can for his son, and that I love him dearly, and I just chat. Yeah.
Do you feel like, as you sense and I guess observe higher alignment in him, do you feel like that there's like a correlating higher alignment that occurs within yourself?
I sense the shift in his energy from the other side. I sense and feel when he comes in that he's quite strong and lovely. I feel his love in my soul. And when he's also funny, he's got a good light-hearted sense of humor. And he, like, when I went to get petrol and I asked the young man if he'd put the bonnet up and put water in my windscreen wiper unit, because it was windy and I didn't want to fight the bonnet. And I said to him, I said, I really appreciate what you've done. My son would have done it, but unfortunately he's not here. I just left it at that. And I was driving off, and my son, oh no, and the man said to me, oh, come back anytime, I'm happy to do it for you. And I was driving away, and I heard my son saying to me, oh, Mum, you really milked that one, didn't you? And I thought, oh, God. And I thought, yep, that's my boy. So
When you
he does.
Yeah.
11/11
in New York.
Oh, really?
When you first mentioned it, the first time you mentioned it, I got this thing in my head, jokester, and I don't know why that happened. But now that you've said a couple of things, I'm thinking it must have been.
It's him.
Yeah.
He'll be around us, because I told him I was going to be talking about my experience, and that I would do it with honor, and that it might support some people or expand them in some way. I don't know, but it was just because we are having a human experience, and that includes people getting sick, people passing over, and as we can embody more power and more understanding with the expansion that's happening, it's really important to bring it into practice in our everyday life for everyday circumstances. And that's simply the way it is. And I'm hoping that the subject matter hasn't been too heavy or triggering for anyone watching. I'm just sharing it from my perspective. It's not the only perspective, etc. And I would like to just offer some lovely light stuff, because the subject has been quite intense. If that's okay, Todd.
Absolutely, we'd be honored. In fact, the whole thing's been an honor.
Oh, bless you. Well, it's been actually my honor too to be here, and I feel privileged to be able to share on this lovely platform that I've been a part of for so long. I really am really grateful for this. So if everybody who is here now just takes a breath, I'm getting the feeling to ask you to breathe into your belly, breathing into your belly, resting your eyes and being open to receive. I'd just like to share something from the deeper part of myself, the higher aspects, to just offer some softening. Oh my, yeah, should I? You know, here my mala at here marata urupai ane. I ha Eshamala taki ane. I have Impratacola. Aratacame era. I ya my escuye. Arai mano, I will my little lake. Aratuku oishmaratikiata. Amala ia skura. Ogura. Oshikamara. Everything's beautiful.
I don't want to leave now.
Everything is beautiful.
Yes.
My heart is so open and loving to everyone. If there was one thing that's happened for me is I've opened to more.
I bet in like especially the last 2 months, I bet you must have had probably more than one occasion where you saw yourself up close like you've never seen before. And I mean that in like in a reverent way.
Yeah.
Like where you're just looking at you're looking at the real you and going, holy shit. Wow. I mean, have you had that happen?
Yeah. And there's lots of me, like it did feel like another dark field for sometimes. I was shining my own soul light around myself. It was crazy. And yeah, I guess I'm seeing a different me.
Yeah.
You're right, Todd.
Yeah. God, it's amazing what it takes for us to become present. I mean, without being in judgment. I mean, I'm actually speaking in reverence too, but the things that actually take us down, that actually challenge us and require us to be self-sufficient and self-reliant and not to externalize anything. And then, like in your story, such a great example because like you said, what was really, really interesting, you said that your body, I guess, was used to getting up and worrying. It was part of your being, right? And it's like that leaves, and this higher connection comes in of what you had, what you detached from.
Yeah.
It actually comes back more enhanced and attached in, you know, in the cosmic web kind of way, right?
Yeah, my connection is strong and more mature. You know, he's got sensibility now, clarity, and holding a love that you know, that I hadn't felt from him.
Yeah.
So it's interesting times for everyone, and whether, you know, whatever changes people are going through, they can assimilate and accommodate these changes from taking it into their body. It's the same process. To be really honest, we are being asked to embody more of ourselves and our experiences, like rather than reject. Just take it all through. No matter what, take it all through. It just makes us more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and these individual, and what you said, God, I can't remember how you just said this, but about, okay, so these things are happening on an individual level, and without taking anything away from anyone or anything, they're really all the same thing, taking us to the same place. And
That's
it's
it.
this, you know what I mean? And it's this, and it's interesting to watch this every day where, and I'm in there with everybody, with you, with everybody. And there's that collective kind of streams of narrative, right? The suggestive programming, let's put it that way. And it's interesting how because of the individual experiences people are having, and these they're rising one way or another. They're rising. They're choosing themselves. Their hero stories. It's just a superseding what looks to be this big elephant in the room. You know, whatever, this herd of elephants. But this human soul, what we are, what we contain, both human and not, or however you want to put it, is really making itself known through people like you more than anything.
So I think life's certainly pushing, let's say in some cases, or people are choosing to go within, just basically own their own feelings, take responsibility for their inner journey and their lives, their own truth, their heart speaks, etc. And this is what I'm seeing people are actually recognizing, as opposed to going outside of themselves as it used to be, the old way. Yeah, definitely.
I would imagine that you know, that there were times, and there will be, and there's nothing wrong with it, where you just stop, you're in the bathroom, you walk by the mirror in the hall, and you look at yourself and you go, holy shiitake mushrooms, I am soul. Like, wow. Thank you, universe. Thank it. Like you were saying earlier, you've actually fallen deeper in love with yourself, right?
Yeah.
I mean, with that love comes all that other stuff, right? Honor, respect, and
then, you know, you diamondize your heart, and then the facets just shine out stronger, brighter to support the rest through that. And it's like being enlightened by your own light. Yeah.
Yeah. That's another good one. That's like 3 good takeaways you gave. 3 good memes.
Have you written them down?
No. Well, you can't write anything down in this climate anymore. I can't even tie my own shoes. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, but that's what it is. And I think everyone, because the hero's journey isn't just a lifetime. It can actually be in a moment. And I think that's what's happening. You're starting to see, particularly with women, which energetically makes sense. You're starting to see this hero's journey frequency, this imprint, this, hey, I'm all for this, all for one for all thing. But equality is equality, fairness is fairness, love is love, and I'm not taking this anymore. And that can come out a lot of different ways, such as your story, which is where you said, okay, I can either go down this path, or I can take everything that I am and I can apply myself and take myself through that 8 weeks.
Yeah.
You like, I think this is what's happening. What you're such an incredible example of is what is the new human? I mean, we talk about, with honor. I mean, we talk about our galactic lineage and angelic and so many things, but there's a multi-layered, multi-conscious human that you actually sat down and got to know each and every one of them and gave each and every one of them the attention and the nourishment and the love they needed. Nothing was left out. And so that's...
No. And I'm being called to mention too that for a lot of us, we have been connecting into our star lineage and all the multidimensional frequencies that we can pull in through our bodies.
Yeah.
But having a body, over there, they don't have a body. We have a body here, and it's there for a reason. Okay? It is a beautiful thing to have a body, because through the body, we can exponentially speed up our soul growth through processing everything through this body system. There's more systems operating within the bodies, and I'm talking about all the bodies, than the general public or people are aware of. With the rewiring of the mind and the upgrades and the crystallizing of our bodies, etc., we will all come to have new relationships with all of these systems. They're being upgraded and they're there for a reason. And you can't skip any of the steps, so to speak. And if we want to bring in the full force or power that we can be here, then it is actually about the body. It's not about, I'm this and I can. It's about really bringing it through the body, processing everything through the body, honoring the temple that we be. I mean, it's a temple, and really looking after it, because I mean, I'm proud that I've had a certain respect for my body over the years, because as I'm maturing, it's serving me well. We can become self-healers, of course. We can do so much with the body than we don't realize, and that's another conversation, to be honest, because another of my practices. Yeah.
Well, here's another thing I've never heard somebody say. All right. I've never heard somebody say, and I believe what you just said, that the body, obviously you're in the body, you can do things that you can't do when you don't have a body. But in terms of soul transformation and soul elevation and expansion, that makes a lot of sense, that you're actually, the things that you can take through in this range, like the let's say one end of the playing field is the body in the third dimension, to be able to do that. That's something to think about. And based on everything that seems to be happening, it's kind of happening regardless of whether we believe it or not, or want it to or not. You know what I mean? I mean,
That's right. So why not
Yeah.
be in charge? Why not be the master? Well, I don't like the word master, but why not be the one that takes the body through it rather than it happening without you being alert, aware, and with your loving grace take your body through it.
Yeah.
You know?
It's an innateness, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and to me, because of that, you know, if I think about certain times of similar energies, there was this innate thing, and I've always felt like it was. I know it's a mother energy. There's something about it that's like I don't know. It just is.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe what we're seeing is, you know, individuals actually getting to a point where they can actually do what something like you've done. I mean, imagine that happening, somebody consciously applying everything that they've learned and gained to directly to a situation in the present and utilizing that, let's say, that energetic field for powerful transformation. Now, imagine if there were even like 100,000 women had the same story in the last, you know, whatever it is, because linear doesn't matter. Imagine those are the new templates of old, right? I mean,
that's right. And the fact that I have been through it as I have, it's already out there. It's already patterning for someone else to pick up.
Yeah.
Whether it's spoken about or just been happened. That's how it works. And I would love to know that others that have received the trauma and the shock and the grievance of a loved one passing can view it from a higher perspective.
Yes.
And a heart range, you know, understanding that that dear one, it's their choice. We have free will. It's their life. That person, through their free will, chose to go. So why argue with something that's already been done? Just honor, respect, and love, and you know, and then process, because it's then becomes your journey, and then the processing will be to do with how well you know your body, how well are you the tuning fork, the instrument with your body,
present. Like it's like coulda, woulda, shoulda, or circumstances and consequences are the same damn thing. It's done, you know, it's done, and yeah, there is an element to that, but I think the one of the fascinating things about what you're talking about is I've known people who have gone through similar experiences, who have, you know, from my perspective, different approaches and different things that I was able to observe and experience, I guess. And I've seen people, in fact, I'm thinking of one person who I have a lot of respect for, went through a very similar situation, was very public about it, was very, you know, her intentions were, it was just beautiful. It was a beautiful courage. I don't know that anyone could have done what you're doing 3, 4, 5 years ago. I don't know that the energy was that, you know what I mean?
No.
But the thing that's really fascinating to me, or one of the things that's really fascinating to me about yours, is that but you know, it's one thing to be aware. It's another thing to engage it, walk the talk. So you actually identified your different parts. Gave them the attention necessary and needed, right?
To process the experience.
Yeah. So because what we've, in other words, there's a lot of stuff written, even you go back to the sacred books and the great philosophers, you know, and they sum it up in a few words. We know it's real. They're right next to you, or like say in this example, but it's not, it doesn't work because it's just like a mind message. but to apply it, to really apply it, and then to talk about it.
Yeah.
That's worth more. Yeah.
It works because I applied it, and I know that it works because it has worked in offering me the liberation, the freedom. I've anchored myself back here without my son. My son no longer is on this earth plane. I loved him so much. Beautiful soul connection. I still have that. Yeah. I still have that. I respect his wishes, and I've processed, because in my mind, I felt like that right from the beginning, but my body hadn't processed it. That was the difference. I needed to allow my body the processing so that it could just get processed out, so that now I'm ready. I'm ready to move forward without that holding me back.
Wow. Powerful.
No, thank you, Todd.
Thank you. Thank you for hanging out with us, and thank you for sharing everything.
Oh, thank you.
It's a lot of energy.
I'm on my cell phone. I'm not very technology minded. I had a bit of trouble jumping on. Thank you, Spirit. I know they wanted me here because it happened. But I can't see any comments. I don't know if.
There's been a lot. If you wanted to go back and look at them, you can go. I tagged you, first of all, and
yeah.
So you can. That tag is from my page on Facebook, with most of, well, I'd say 50-60% of the viewers, and then, but if you go to YouTube, Soulogy One Studios channel, and then click it, then you can click live chat replay, and it'll show you all the comments as well.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, very people seem to be, first of all, resonate very much. I'm very grateful. They talked about some of their experiences, and then also talked about, what a great subject matter and content. And I agree, even if, I think somebody's here. I told you when you came on, when you started to talk, I saw this. I don't know if I saw the word or just the energy jokester. Not in a bad way, just a funny kind of a feeling, and here we go.
They're very much still here until they're buried, so to speak, until the funeral's over. They're very, very much here. And my son, the day of the funeral, I had decided to, anyway, I took my boots off because I was putting something else on, and my socks, one of my socks disappeared. I'd just taken my socks off. They were on the ground, and one of them disappeared. I was furious because I was in a hurry. And I said to my son, did you take my sock? I said, anyway, I went and got another pair of socks from the drawer. And then I sat on the bed to put them on. Do you know what? I looked down, and the sock that had been missing was actually now on my other foot.
I don't know if that's him or just the glitches in the Matrix.
Well, hey, he's in the Matrix, I'm sure. I mean,
right.
For goodness sake.
If he was still here, I could see his involvement.
You know what I'm saying? I thought, this is crazy. I said to him, I said, you've got quite powerful in a very short time, son. Thinking, whoa, that's pretty heavy. Pretty amazing. Anyway, much love to you, Todd. I am so grateful to be able to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, it was beautiful. We're honored to have you on here, and love to do it sometime later in the year or something, see how you're doing.
Yeah, I'm sure there's something I can speak to with my heart and passion. It would be great. Yeah. Much love to you.
Much love to you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Peace out.